And some Richie Sunak in a minute. Cheers. Skeleton time. Like Pirates of the Caribbean. Sore finger. No, I can. Pardon you. Thank you, Minhouse. Is what it is. Indeed. Let's put the TV screen on now. Ooh, I see.
Thanks, Michelle. Hi, everyone. How are you doing? Excellent. Great to be here at Oakfield Stadium, which I think received a grant from one of our football grant funds, didn't it, here for more pitches, which is fantastic. And it's also great to be here with Michelle. Now, Michelle is a superb minister. I don't know if you guys know what we've been doing over the past year when she's up in Westminster, but she has made the UK the technology capital of Europe. She held a summit.
Hello, everyone.
AI, which
Hello again.
We led on the world stage when it comes to making sure we get the opportunities of that technology right. And she's also led the world in making sure that our children are safe when they go in line. Those are extraordinary achievements. Please join me in saying well done to Michelle for everything that she's doing. But I know she also works incredibly hard for you here at home. I'm always following her social media. I don't think I've ever seen anyone do more supermarket surgeries and fake appearances than Michelle.
There's our Prime Minister, Richie Sunak.
For all of you.
What about Keir Starmer next in Labour?
And there are, I think, 57 more GPs here now than there were before. Local policing was another priority of Michelle, so there are now 195 more police officers on your street as a result of Michelle's campaigning. And education, as we Conservatives know, is the best way to transform children's lives, which is why we've made sure with Michelle's help that every primary school pupil here is getting £4,000 of funding and every secondary school pupil £5,000 in funding, so we can transform their lives and spread opportunity. But I also wanted to say it's great to be here with all of you. Members like you are the lifeblood of our party, and everywhere I've been in this campaign across the country, I'm continually struck and inspired by your energy, your determination, and your dedication to our cause. So I wanted to thank you personally for that. And also, I know you're all going to work incredibly hard to get Michelle re-elected, aren't you? Yeah, there we go. That's what I need you to do. And no, the last few years have been tough. I know that, you know that. COVID, Ukraine, all the impact it's had on everyone's livelihoods, their bills, their family finances. But I hope you also know that I will always have you and everyone else's back during these tough times. Whether that was with the furlough scheme, when I was Chancellor, the support with energy bills, when that crisis struck, or more recently after I became Prime Minister, our bold plan to bring inflation back to normal. And after a tough few years, I think people can start to see now that our plan is working. Our Conservative plan has delivered economic stability back to our country. Inflation back to normal, 11% down to just over 2%. The economy is now growing faster than France, Germany, Italy, and the United States. Wages have been rising faster than prices for almost a year now, and that shows that we're on the right track.
But the NHS is disintegrating. I am one of 2,500 GPs in this country who are currently unemployed due to your policies. What are you going to do about that? 37,000 GPs will not vote Conservative because of the constructive dismissal of general practice that is currently occurring. Well, you cannot employ lesser qualified people instead of GPs. They cannot be replaced. The country is not stupid.
Well, no one, if I could answer.
Lesser qualified people are being used to conduct consultations, which are massively complex. Most people we see over the age of 40 have at least 6 different diseases going on at once. They cannot be coped with by half-qualified staff.
GP spend all time already in the surgery, though.
Oh, really? That's so. You go to the surgery and you will find out how much they earn. The amount that they earn is publicly declared on every website.
No, if you just mind. So my dad was a GP, but my mum was also a pharmacist. So that's the household I grew up in. My parents dedicated themselves to primary care. I know a thing or two about it. I worked very hard in my mum's pharmacy. And whilst we're supporting GPs, and actually right now supporting them with investment in digital telephony to make sure that we can make it easier for get access to them, we are also making it easier for people to see other primary care practitioners to get the treatments they need. And that's where I'll respectfully disagree with you, because I do think it is right that people can now see their pharmacist to get medicines for seven common ailments like sore throats, ear infections, and sinusitis. And that is an example of something we're doing. We're making it easier for people to get the care they need. But I will always support primary care, as I said, because I'm the son of both a GP and a pharmacist. But we can't have a strong NHS without a strong economy. And that's the choice at this election. Do we build on the progress that we have made? Turn that secure foundation that we now have into something that can deliver a secure future for everyone and their families, so we can continue to cut their taxes and invest in the NHS? Or do we put all that progress, after all that hard work and sacrifice and resilience of our country, at risk and go back to square one with Labour? Because the only certainty with Labour that we all know, don't we, is that they are going to put up everyone's taxes. Right? And as you saw the other night, it's £2,000 in tax rises for every working family in our country. That's what all their uncosted policies add up to. I don't think that's the right policy. You don't think that's the right policy, because we want to deliver financial security for our country. And that's the choice of this election. And with your support, with your help, we will go out and about across not just the Southwest, but across the country, and take that message to the country that with the Conservatives, we will cut your taxes, we will deliver a more secure future for you and your family, and that's what the plan is. Thank you very much. Bye, 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 bye.
Interesting. Thank you, Rockstar. Thank you. That is very interesting. What could one say? But I was just on this TV anyway. Well, I'll find out as I was on it now. There's a few things yesterday on it, but I need to try and have a look and find things. Can't really find anything else. Yes, right. Give me a second while I try and find some more stuff. 1 second. This take me a while to find things on this TV. Just give me a minute and I'll find some more things. Next now.
Just remember,
My apology.
Was noticeable.
No. Did I film this yet? I can't remember.
just remember.
Remember of filming it. Film it again. Why not?
Just remember, the ones that are under the ground, they give everything for you.
It was a mistake not to stay longer.
Brings memories back into it, you know, it's a trouble.
I apologise for that.
A moment of history 80 years in the making. A political blunder that could shape the next 4 weeks of this election. Princes, presidents and prime ministers gathered to commemorate 8 decades since the D-Day landings yesterday, but one man was noticeable by his absence. Earlier in the day, Rishi Sunak paid his respects and represented his nation. By afternoon, though, the German Chancellor and Presidents of France and the United States are standing with him, not Mr Sunak, but the Prime Minister of yesteryear, Lord Cameron. The Foreign Secretary standing in for Mr Sunak, who left the spot where so many sacrificed so much during World War II to take part in a media interview.
On reflection, that was a mistake, and I apologise. I think it's important, though, given the enormity of the sacrifice made, that we don't politicise this. The focus should rightly be on the veterans who gave so much. I had the honour and privilege of speaking to many of them and their families, hearing their stories, expressing my gratitude personally to them.
An intervention by fate this morning, Veterans Way in Stonehouse, Gloucestershire, a pre-booked location for one of today's Conservative campaign visits to a school. For 5 minutes, Rishi Sunak was asked about his decision yesterday. For 5 minutes, the same answer was repeated and blamed.
The itinerary for this set of events was set weeks ago, before the start of the general election campaign.
This was an error of judgment that may well follow him and the Conservatives as a whole for the rest of this election.
What's your favourite ice cream flavour?
Pink.
Is that strawberry?
Yeah.
Privately in the party, outrage and despair. Publicly, the defence, well, one that recognises the fault.
Undoubtedly, veterans will feel pretty raw over this, and I don't dispute that, and I totally understand. And personally, it's a bit crushing, yes, but it is what it is, and it's happened. And he's apologised, and he's made a mistake, and it is not reflective of his wider work on veterans.
For some veterans, though, the events of the last day are just unfathomable.
He should have stayed. I do honestly think that was very disrespectful of him. What he says and what he does are two different things. Talking about bringing back national service, you can't be pro-armed forces and then on a big commemoration like that, just walk out early.
In Aldershot, known as the home of the British Army, an almost unified view among most voters.
It's pretty poor, really. Disrespectful.
It's bad form, isn't it?
I think that's quite disgusting, to be honest.
Obviously something else came up and he had to leave. It's justifiable on my part. All right, he did his bit.
One man who did not leave early, the man who wants the current Prime Minister's job.
I actually found yesterday very emotional. Just before the first ceremony, I just went down towards the beach and contemplated what it must have been like for a 17 or 18-year-old young man or woman to run up that beach under gunfire.
Not a similar age to your son.
Exactly my thoughts. My boy will be 16 this year, and these were 17, 18-year-olds. I found that really humbling, actually. I was very pleased to say thank you. The Prime Minister will have to answer his choices. For me, there was only one choice, which was to be there, paying my respects and my tribute to them, and of course their colleagues who didn't return.
Political leaders from other parties have called Rishi Sunak's actions indefensible and a dereliction of duty. The problem for the Prime Minister, it's a view shared by many in his own party too. It is hard to overestimate the depths of despair within the Conservative Party this evening. The level of anger is only matched by the genuine hurt that some feel that the Prime Minister could commit an act of self-sabotage like this. Sometimes it's already been brought up on the doorstep, and the point they make is that moments of real cut-through like that don't happen very often. You've got to think back to 2010 when Gordon Brown was caught on a microphone calling a woman bigoted. But the point they make is that when that happened, it was a mistake that happened in the moment. This, what has unfolded, was signed off and premeditated by the Prime Minister. That, they say, is unforgivable.
Paul, what's going on with Labour's manifesto?
Yeah, well, effectively, that's been signed off tonight. I understand that the only people who really didn't get signed off was the union Unite. They said they got some concessions on the NHS and steel, but they couldn't find a compromise on workers' rights and protections for oil and gas. Now, ordinarily, divisions between Labour and unions going into election would be a hot topic. Going into tonight's debate, that would be seized upon. However, given everything that's happened in the last 24 hours, that is going to pale into insignificance.
Thanks, Paul.
Interesting. Very interesting. Always think of these ideas of things.
When we think of D-Day, perhaps the most vivid imagery comes not from the newsreels of the time, but from cinema. For example, the visceral, haunting scenes of Saving Private Ryan. That movie star Tom Hanks is an amateur history buff. He calls himself a lay historian, and he takes it really seriously. And since that film, he's produced with Steven Spielberg the acclaimed TV series Band of Brothers, The Pacific, and most recently Masters of the Air. He came to Normandy this time now to pay his respects to the veterans, and I spoke with him about why this anniversary means so much, and about the importance of storytelling and remembering. Tom Hanks, welcome.
Christian, how nice to see you.
And here, this is
What a
almost
day.
your home as well. I
What a
mean, you've
day.
done so much on World War II. I just want to know what it feels like to be here on the 80th. It may be the last of these reunions.
If you do the math, if you
And he was in Toy
you were
Story as well.
17 years old,
As Woody.
and you were making your first trip into combat
Hanks was.
on June 6th of 1944. You would do the math. You're now 97 years old. That they're here. I mean, the first
And
thing I
Saving
say
Private
to
Ryan.
any of the veterans that I happen to meet is, don't get up, because they're more or less wheelchair bound. But there they are, resplendent in their patches and their hats and their caps and the memories. And I ponder what these last 80 years have been for them. I want to ask them, what's the most extraordinary thing you've witnessed since that day? And there's an awful lot to take note of. But would any of it have happened if this day had not been?
Well, I wonder, since you lead me straight into that question, it's probably, bar the Cold War, when there wasn't a raging war in Europe, is probably the most difficult, most existential crisis for everybody since their sacrifice, with Russia having invaded Ukraine, with a literal raging war in Europe.
I never thought there'd be a land war in Europe in my lifetime once again, because it had proven to be so disastrous for all of humanity the last time somebody tried that. And it's funny how often it comes out of the ego of one human being. One guy back in the 1930s says, no, I'm going to solve all these problems because I know what works and what does not work. I think, look, I'm a lay historian, and I'm as opinionated as any knothead that you're ever going to come across. But there was this thought that America, particularly America, was lazy, was divided, was undisciplined, that couldn't get its act together, that would never band together in order just to do the right thing by choice. And when I'm here, I think of a bunch of kids. There was a young force that came here. They were somewhere between high school. If you were 25 years old, they called you Pops, or they called you the old man. And they left absolute all of the comforts of a very comfortable America, safe America on the other side of the ocean. And they put themselves here for what? Because it was the right thing to do. And they were not defending the status quo. They were not gaining territory. They were not here for riches. They were not here to conquer anything. They were really here in order to mend the future, if I can coin a word that has just come out in a book that I read not too long ago. There was an article, I want to say, in the Bedford newspaper, in which on the 6th of June, because of the time lag, made it possible for the 6th of June to have this be the headlines in the United States of America. And it said the next 50 years of European history is being decided right now on the fields and beaches of Normandy. It was not about everything that had happened prior to 1944. It was actually about what was going to happen in 1954 and 64. I was born in 1956. Had D-Day not happened, and that's not hard to imagine here. You can look around and we can see the invasion in our mind's eye. We can see that day, but we can also imagine, with a little bit of turn of phrase, what if it had not happened? If this had stayed as it had been, a conquered territory by one of the most murderous regimes. There we go. There's a FedEx is delivering my Uber lunch right now. What would it have been like if all that young forces and the Canadians and the English and all of the Free Frances had not come along and said, those people are wrong?
Okie dokie. Hold on a second. Try to find some more stuff. Always trying to find something on here.
New Comfort Scent Booster emits.
There's Nigel Farage.
Boost.
Firstly, your reaction to the Prime Minister missing the end of the D-Day anniversary.
It's appalling, and it shows the man doesn't understand. He's not basically patriotic. He doesn't care about our history, frankly, our culture. D-Day was an amazing operation between the Americans, Canadians, and us. It was the beginning of the liberation of Europe. It was done at huge sacrifice. There are still people alive that were there, and they were back on those beaches. It's the last time they'll ever be there. But that didn't matter to the Prime Minister. Now, getting back to do an interview, seemed to take a higher priority. And it shows just how disconnected this Prime Minister is. And that's a big problem, because the one thing you've always associated the Conservatives with is being a patriotic party. Well, it's now got an unpatriotic leader.
Is it as much about the people around the Prime Minister advising him as it is about him himself?
Oh, I'm sure that he was given bad advice, but he is supposed to be a national leader in tune with where the nation is. And I promise you something. D-Day is something the people of this nation are immensely proud of, and rightly so. This was an occasion on a national and international scale to pay homage, particularly to those few survivors that we have left. He doesn't understand that. I was there, but I was there in a personal capacity with friends. I raised money for a charity, a lot of money to get veterans out there. And honestly, I think I'm much more closely attuned to where the country than he is.
You were there, but in this campaign you said that some young Muslims don't share British values. Would you like to pay tribute to the 1 million Muslims who served in the British Army during the Second World War?
It's far bigger than that. Actually, 40% of the entire contribution that we made, that we had in 2 world wars, 40% came from what we now call the Commonwealth. So there were people right across the world, and by the way, they were all volunteers. None of them were pressed to do it. So I fully understand that history. The problem that I'm talking about is a separate problem of 18 to 24-year-old young Muslims who are born in this country who increasingly are being radicalized.
Do you understand why people have found those comments uncomfortable, to say the least? Why it has been, taken on by people, you say you're not racist, but it has been used by people who are racist to fuel their arguments?
I'm not interested in those people, and thank goodness in this country they are a tiny minority fringe. All I'm doing is stating an obvious truth that makes people in Britain feel very, very uncomfortable. Why? And I don't know the answer. Why are young British-born Muslims being attracted to jihad and radicalism? And if we don't talk about it, we've no chance of dealing with it.
I'm going to ask you one more question quickly on D-Day. President Biden and Macron both use this as an opportunity to stress the importance of more support for Ukraine. You once spoke of your admiration for Vladimir Putin.
No, I didn't.
You said he was an operator, as you put it.
Well, that's not admiration, is it? So let's get this right. I said he was.
Do you still think?
I said he was an unpleasant human being. I wouldn't want to spend time with him, but he was a very clever political operator. Let's get the context right, shall we?
And can I ask, do you think that you're more charismatic than Richard Tice?
Oh, goodness gracious me, that's not for me to judge.
Oh, goodness gracious me.
I don't know, I've no idea, but I am more
Oh, goodness gracious me.
And Sunak, of that I have no doubt at all.
How do you take the news that you were big footing in this week?
I always got to do a video. Every day. I'm addicted to doing videos every day, but just never anything on the TV. To keep looking and looking. Today's news.
Always here for you.
The people of Britain have been unbelievably generous towards illegal immigrants. We pay millions in tax for them.
Yeah. Today's, though, is it? 2 hours ago.
Actually, I think the country is broken beyond repair. And, I observe that in my ordinary life, and certainly I observe that in relation to the total destruction of the criminal justice system, which is, as close to a national emergency as we can get. Kathy, can I just make sure that your listeners understand I have no formal role as a government advisor. I have in the past advised the government on things to do with extremism, but I don't have any formal role. I have resigned as a member of the Conservative Party, but just, I don't want to get the impression that I've got status above my station.
No problems at all. I think we understand that. That's great to have it clarified, though. Just explain then why you've resigned. We've seen a resignation letter, which was.
I like the news channels. They're interesting.
Set out for our listeners what it is that made
a mixture of news.
Well, I suppose you could say that I've been circling the drain for some time. I mean, I've resigned from the Conservative Party, but I'm philosophically still a Conservative. I still believe in conservative ideals. And you can probably tell from my accent, I'm from Northern Ireland. People from my community, and I include myself in this, have a particular visceral affinity to remembrance, the act of remembrance, which kind of runs through us culturally. So for me, everybody's got different tolerances, but for me, the act of colossal disrespect, of unforgivable disrespect by the Prime Minister was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back. I had considered resigning before because of the government's Legacy and Reconciliation Act in Northern Ireland, which I believe...
Let some of you guys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, listen to the radio as well.
People who suffered
when you've got time
by terrorists against them and were bereaved into a kind of no man's land of no criminal...
Saying that, most people just go into YouTube.
On perpetrators. And I didn't then. What I did was try to work behind the scenes to bolster what was very bad legislation and which remains very bad legislation. So I've kind of been on the edge, as it were, but this act of disrespect by the Prime Minister, I don't know, something just slipped in me, and I thought I cannot be attached to a party that is, so cynical as to, have the Prime Minister returning from the D-Day commemoration. And it's been said before, where there are men there...
That's three things the Prime Minister's done wrong now. Not staying for D-Day, trying to take money off people,
and the scuttleback
and making people go in the army.
To do a pre-recorded interview to defend an indefensible position on taxation as an attack line.
We all look at things differently in the world, don't we?
Conscience continue to be a member of a party that is either so incompetent or so cynical, or both.
And you the tax
back is
row played into this. Then you just said there, that it's an indefensible position. The accusations that Labour was going to raise taxes by £2,000.
Well, yes, and part of my understanding of being a conservative is that we act in the interests of the country.
Some people like this and some people don't. But Times Radio is a very interesting program.
Have integrity.
I mean, I like Times Radio, but it is what it is. Every time you can tell, hit your way.
We have some breaking news for you tonight as the Sandy Hook
Alex Jones, you've not heard him for a while.
We have some breaking news for you tonight as the InfoWars host and known conspiracy theorist Alex Jones has just moved to liquidate his personal assets to pay the families of the victims of the Sandy Hook massacre.
Did that song, didn't he?
Alex Jones owes us
America Burns, America Burns.
$1 billion in damages over his repeated lies and claims that the shooting was a hoax. Joining us now is senior media reporter Oliver Darcy. And Oliver, tell us what's happening here and what this means for Alex Jones.
Well, for one, the families are going to hopefully see some money. They haven't seen a dime since these judgments came down, meaning that Alex Jones owes them $1.5 billion for telling this really heinous lie about the Sandy Hook shooting back in 2012. It also means that he's no longer eventually going to own InfoWars, which is a conspiracy empire that he's used for years and years to peddle all sorts of lies and conspiracy theories. He's eventually going to lose control of that. It is a little bit confusing because his company's in bankruptcy court and he's personally in bankruptcy court, but because he owns the company, it's part of his personal assets, this does mean he will lose control of the company.
Well, and can we just play this? We were all watching this moment of him on
backwards
InfoWars
today,
where he was seeming to cry about this situation that he was in.
I believe in my parents. I believe in humanity. I just want to stop these people. They gotta be stopped. We gotta stop them. So, at the end of the day, we're gonna beat these people.
Him talking about the future of this company.
I think he sees the writing on the wall there, Caitlin, and he was talking all weekend about how this was likely possible, that he was going to get shut down, and now he is agreeing tonight in court to liquidate his personal assets, which again will mean that he's not going to own this conspiracy empire he's owned since the 1990s and really used to poison the public discourse.
Yeah, I don't think he inspires much sympathy with this. Cheers. Oliver Darcy, thank you for joining us.
Our media correspondent Hadass Gold is tracking the story for us. Hadass, so does this finally mean that Alex Jones will have to pay for years of lying about what happened at Sandy Hook? Well, for these families who have
America
already suffered so much and suffered even more because of Alex Jones' terrible lies that he was spreading about this massacre that happened to these children. These families have actually not yet seen a single dime. Now, this ruling, or this decision to liquidate his assets, this does not mean that tomorrow these families are finally going to see some sort of monetary help in the form of this liquidation of the assets, but it is at least a step in the right direction. Now, as you noted, Alex Jones has been ordered to pay $1.5 billion to these families. This is a combination of rulings that he had been found for defamation, for emotional distress. Now, Alex Jones until now had been fighting against the liquidation of his assets. He tried to do other things in bankruptcy courts to have them reorganize his assets, reorganize his company. But this was a sort of surprise decision that came late yesterday, where he did ask the court to help him start liquidating his personal assets. Now, the families had requested this. Instead of to allow this reorganization, they had requested that the court liquidate his assets, especially as there had been reporting by both the Associated Press and the New York Times that he was continuing to spend lavishly, and also that he was allegedly possibly trying to transfer some of his money to members of his families to keep it out of the hands of the creditors. But it seems that the mounting pressure just got to the point that he recognized he needed to liquidate his assets. We saw hints of this last week on his InfoWars conspiracy show. He started to break down in sort of bizarre tears last week, saying that the feds were going to come to shut down his show. But now we know that what this likely was pointing to was the fact that he was going to need to liquidate his assets. I should note.
Why doesn't he move away to another country and they can't take his money?
Liquidated, even if all of the company's assets are liquidated, it is unlikely to reach that $1.5 billion that these families are owed.
Use your brain.
All right, Hadass Gold, thanks so much.
It's doing it. But people don't see it the same way.
Now, pro-democracy activists in Sudan say that around 40 civilians were killed on Thursday when RSF paramilitary forces shelled Omdurman, a city which lies across the Nile from the capital Khartoum. More than 50 people are reportedly injured. The Rapid Support Forces are also accused of carrying out a massacre on Wednesday in which at least 150 people died. The UN Children's Fund says 35 children were among the victims of that attack on a village in central Sudan. The RSF have been battling former allies, the Sudanese military for control of Sudan since last April. Well, let's speak to our senior Africa correspondent, Anne Soy, who is in Nairobi for us. Anne, what more can you tell us about all of these developments this past week?
Well, it is clear that the fighting is continuing, it's getting more intense, particularly in those two areas in the twin city of Omdurman, as well as in the southern state of El Jazeera, where the attack happened on Wednesday, and where we heard that at least 35 children were among those who were killed. The death toll was put at over 100, some thought about 200 people. It was still very tense, and therefore they could not get the actual casualty figure. There's also intense fighting going on in the western side of the country in Darfur, where the army still controls one city in the north, El Fasher, and intense fighting has been going on there for over a month. There's been shelling in homes, in hospitals. Nothing is spared. Tens of thousands of people continue to flee. Sudan, at the moment, has one of the world's largest displacement crises.
And this attack on Wednesday in particular, reports around it, it's a reminder, isn't it, that this conflict is deeply impacting children in Sudan?
It is deeply impacting children, and we have heard from the UN now that at least 5 million children are among people who have been displaced in Sudan. Children have been, abducted, some have been raped. So it has been a devastating year, not just for the women and children, but also all Sudanese. This is essentially a fight between two generals.
The whole world's gone mad.
The paramilitary unit RSF and the National Army. And many believe that this is a conflict that could have been avoided.
Some people wish it was a
There
better
have
place.
been, attempts to try and bring them to the negotiating
People are
table.
running it.
Still very futile. Just last week, the Army General Al Burhan spoke on phone to the U.S. Secretary General Anthony Blinken, but he declined the invitation to go for more talks.
And you've been covering this conflict for some time now. I wonder what you're hearing from people in the region and also your own personal thoughts on the level of attention on Sudan right now in the midst of so many other crises in the world, like Gaza.
It's not nice that
Ukraine.
people get attacked in the crossfire, innocent
The
people.
people of Sudan are desperate. They are asking questions. Why is this happening to us? They are caught between two very armed militaries in the country. They say that this war has nothing to do with them, but they're bearing the biggest brunt of it. Their lives have been disrupted completely. We're talking about, even professionals like doctors, teachers, they stopped working last year. They have been forced to flee. Those who are living on their savings, those savings have now by far ran out. And so it's a very devastating thing for Sudanese. And they also feel like they are forgotten by the world. They do not feel that, it has been given as much attention as the other conflicts that are going on in Ukraine and Gaza. And those are the questions that they are asking. And they're asking the world not to forget that.
There's always something happening, isn't there?
Hey, your mom's coming over for dinner. Can you help me get the house in order?
The Prime Minister walking out on the nation's veterans, departing early from events commemorating the 80th anniversary of D-Day, rushing back to the UK to record a TV campaign interview, leaving the Foreign Secretary Lord Cameron to stand with the world leaders instead. And the leader of the opposition too.
A campaign TV interview over the opportunity to commemorate those who gave everything for our country in June 1944. You left early. What were you thinking?
Over the past 2 days, I've participated in a number of events in Portsmouth and France to honour those who risked their lives to defend our freedom and our values 80 years ago. The itinerary for these events was set weeks ago, before the start of the general election campaign, and having participated in all the British events with British veterans, I returned home before the International Leaders event later in the day. On reflection, that was a mistake, and I apologise. I think it's important, though, given the enormity of the sacrifice made, that we don't politicise this.
It's men like Ken Hay the Prime Minister chose to leave behind. He was just 18 when he landed on the beaches of Normandy. He was later captured, forced to work in a Polish coal mine, and subjected to the infamous 1,000-mile-long march. His anger is not political.
I think he lets the country down. What are we doing? We bail out, let them get on with it. Because I want to stand in the election, I want my seat back. How soon will long before they forget? Are we a 5-minute wonder? It'll all be forgotten next week, I don't know.
Ken Hay, a 98-year-old D-Day veteran, told us that you let the country down. Is he right?
I participated in events both in Portsmouth and in France over 2 days because this is an incredibly important moment for our country to commemorate the sacrifice of all of those and their service. And it was a real honour and a privilege to meet many veterans and speak to them and their families, hear their stories, express my gratitude to them, and build on our record of making sure that this is the best country in the world for veterans.
Prime Minister, you didn't care, did you?
No, I cared deeply.
Then why didn't you stay?
As I said, the itinerary for these events was set weeks ago, before the general election campaign. I participated in events both in Portsmouth and in France, and having fully participated in all the British events with British veterans, I returned home before the International Leaders event. That was a mistake, and I apologise for that.
You feel no shame at all?
As I said, on reflection, it was a mistake not to stay longer, and I've apologised for that. But I also don't think it's right to be political in the midst of D-Day commemorations. The focus should rightly be on the veterans and their service and sacrifice for our country.
It's the veterans who are saying that you're letting the country down. Are they politicising this?
Yeah, I've apologised for not staying longer. On reflection, that was a mistake.
A difficult exchange with a PM in crisis.
Well, some people would say that's not good enough.
Fury from
But
his
there
own
we go.
side. One
I think he has let the country down. The Prime Minister doesn't seem to care, does he? So, madness. I don't think we even voted for the Prime Minister. But I'm going to see what other news is on here. We can probably film some more news, because that's what I like to do. I like to film news. News today. That's what this channel's all about, is filming news, which is nothing wrong with that. Some news. Unless I've run out of news, who knows? Yeah.
Liar.
Can't seem to find what much is what on. Donald Trump. Yeah. Not showing a great deal of news today, are they? Which is kind of annoying. There's usually a lot more stuff on you can find on the TV, but depends what you're into. Unbelievable. Why is there no news on news today? Unless it's because it's Friday. There's hardly any bloody news on.
Done my job.
2 days ago, go for this one.
New Comfort Scent Booster Elixir is here.
During the Normandy landings, you had a successful landing and you made your way onto a bitterly contested area known as Hill 112. What was that like? Can you talk us through what you and your regiment were having to face when you landed?
Rommel said, whoever holds 112 holds Normandy. And if you go up there, you can see...
I mean, I didn't manage to film the most of the things of the other day, so I'm filming some of it now. Sometimes there's not a lot of stuff on the TV that people have not seen. That's why I'm filming this sort of stuff.
43rd Div were given the job of capturing it.
I filmed some stuff what was here today, but this is 2 days ago.
112.
Video,
that battle started on the 10th, on the Monday. But on the Friday night, we went out on a night.
Most people, some people may be interested in war, or interested in what I'm sharing on the news.
That's the point where I got captured.
Everyone's different.
By the Nazis. You were taken to Poland and put to work in a coal
It's not for
mine,
everybody, war,
and the
but
Russian troops
you may like the video, may not.
were approaching. Prisoners of war by the Nazis are then marched out, told that you're going to a new location.
Yes.
And that started what was dubbed the Long March, a 1,000-mile walk involving you and 80,000 other prisoners. Many didn't survive this.
That's right. We saw bodies on the side of the road. Because it was bitter weather when we started, 23rd of January, and we were, our coal mine was just out northwest of Katowice. And we marched the first day, all day and all night. And we're slipping, it's not marching as left, right. It's slipping and sliding on the snow and the ice and so on. Bitterly cold. We did get to a camp where they made, it was a sugar factory, but then they moved us out and put us in grain silos for a day. And then they said, right, we're moving next day to another. And that went on for 3 months, all but 2 days. We finished on the 20th of April. We refused to march. We went to sleep in a barn in Michael's Kreuzchen, as it turned out to be. We didn't know, we just had a wood, a forest. At night, we could hear gunfire way for the west, and the odd machine gun. And we knew that it had to be Brits or Americans. The German officer said, all right, but we said, we're not marching anymore. He said, we'll have a rest day, we'll march tomorrow. Yeah, we'll march tomorrow. But that night, the stuff was much closer, and he recognised that the creek was war was finished. And so we waited, that was Friday or Saturday, and on the Sunday, 2 American tanks turned up.
Yeah, you were liberated by the US troops. Can you
Yeah.
describe that moment to us after what you've been through?
Can I recall that moment? Very much so, because somebody yelled out, we were up in the barns again. I think it was a lovely day, and it was the 22nd of April, a Sunday, and somebody yelled out, "There's some tanks." So they all went running. I was on a walking stick at the time, so I went limping on behind. They were throwing out packets of cigarettes and bars of chocolate and so on. And I think one sort of took pity on Tiny Tim coming on behind, as it were, because he went like that, and he reached in and there's a packet about that size, and he just threw it, and I caught it, and it said Wrigley's. And I thought, just my luck. I'm starving, and all I get is bloody chewing gum. I opened it up and reached in and pulled something out and stuffed it in my mouth, not really looking, and it wasn't chewing gum, it was chewing tobacco. I have never tasted anything so foul in my life.
You talk now to children in schools. Why is it so important for you to share your stories with them?
Well, somebody coined a phrase, living history, and we are it, and we're a dying breed, of course. We're all in the queue, and we're up the front of this queue. When I was a kid learning history, it was the Greeks and the Romans and and there's one or two names that stick, like Leonidas and Thermopylae and that sort of
It's
thing.
all out of big, heavy textbooks.
Yeah, but we don't even know who won, you know, who was playing at home, who was playing away, or where it was happening. Here, some of these kids, their granddad or their great-granddad was in it. They haven't had a chance to speak to them, and they've passed on now. But here's a guy who was the same age as their granddad.
Well, you ask them to call you Grandad Ken so they can relate and they
That's right.
understand where they are in.
Yeah. I wanted each one to write to me, to say what they liked about my talk, what bit they didn't like, and what they want to be when they grow up. And I've got all these letters.
Well, I've got some of them here, and you've got.
Oh, you have got
You've
some.
got rave reviews, Ken. Just picking out some. I mean, they talk to you about what they find really interesting. There's a child here that talks about the song "Silent Night," because of course there are so many traditions, whether it be songs or sayings or stories from World War II, that the next generation don't know are linked. So
That's right.
what was the story you told them about Silent Night?
Well, it was Christmas Eve, and unfortunately, although I was on the day shift, I don't know why, but I got involved in going down on the Christmas Eve night. You know, I was just thinking about home. I wonder if midnight mass had started again because it was stopped during the war and the Blitz. I wonder if the folks had gone, and I found myself singing Silent Night.
Yeah.
Look at my Tommy, that is good music. So I said, yeah, it's good music. Tommy, that is Deutsch music, German music. So yeah, it's Deutsch music. And he started singing that. I found out later he was 72, so he was rather falsetto, and I thought I was the second Bing Crosby. So we did a duet down there of Silent Night. With that, when we finished, Tommy, sit. Now, we're used to blowing down the coal, then the miner goes and sits and has his sandwiches, and we carry on working and resent every mouthful. This time I got to sit and watch him eat. No. He came out as they cut the bread through that way. He had two long sandwiches and he gave me one. Later then when we finished the shift, we went to sleep. Then we woke up and Christmas lunch was a piece of bread and so on, nothing. We might have had a spoonful of ersatz jam or something, I don't know, I can't remember. But we had 3 rooms, had a lidded dustbin for the nights we were locked in.
Hannah said her supermarket's matching Aldi.
Really? Yeah.
As it happened, I was the last one down. I went down and it was dark. It was about 4 o'clock and I came out from the loo and I heard and I stopped and I can hear it now. Away in the miners' hall, children's voices singing And it had to be silent night or still night, a Heiliger Nacht as they have it. And I just stood there and thought about home. And I have to confess, I husband and cried. Because we were only sure then we'd never get home, you know. And it was a long way away.
And just finally, because our time together is coming to a close, Ken, and I've loved talking to you, but one of the letters from a little boy called Ewan, who you spoke to, said he was incredibly heartwarmed by your poem and your experience in the war. It was amazing to hear you read the poem. It made me feel calm, peaceful, and proud of everything you have done for us. I wonder if, just to close out our conversation together, Ken, you would mind reading some of that poem. And it's an extract from a poem that you've written called As I Look Back, and it particularly plays to your effort in maintaining the memorials to those that we lost in the war.
Yeah, well, I'm very, very keen on the memorial because, and now having this education centre so that the children can visit and so on. Because if you have the contact with children like I've had going to schools, you can see what it means to them. And I do hope that they rustle up the funds in England to get over there and see them. This poem was written eventually to be given, and I did deliver it in Bayeux Cemetery. And just one verse of it says, with memories I come each year, and often shed a tear, to understand that I came home to live another year. I still can see each passing day the friends I left behind, the price they paid, I nearly paid, is clearly brought to mind.
Well, war's not a good thing, but it's good for money. And, you know, so I can really say that. Anyway, I've done 51 minutes, so you all enjoyed the video. Thank you for all joining me, and I'll be back again soon. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you in the next one. Keep safe, keep positive, and keep smiling. Take it easy, peace.